All right, I wanted to do a brief follow-up to the previous post where I read a faculty email and some commenters asked what the response was, and included in the documents that I had was Naima Lowe's response to that previous letter. So check out the link in the description before proceeding with this one. So Naima Lowe writes, Nancy, please remove me from this list. You've created some weird false equivalencies between the ways that Brett's actions have literally exposed me and other people of color to death threats, and the fact that students are kind of pushy. If y'all want to talk about this together, go for it. I may be reading this wrong. It is probably because I'm so exhausted from dealing with non-stop racism. To which Nancy replies, Done. But Naima, the students weren't just kinda pushy. I'm kinda pushy, and hardly any of my colleagues can bear it. What I experienced was being outnumbered by big, strong, young people who wanted to hurt me, and who made sure to be a threatening presence in my face as they surrounded me and tried to dominate me. I've been through this before in other venues when I was doing absolutely nothing and strangers attempted to overwhelm me. Sometimes they've been successful. I know a threat when I see it. These were white allies, but their tactic is the kind that backfires because they become the very thing to which they object. The awful outcome of all this is that it's Brett who is getting a lot of airtime. The video of students cornering him shows not just the alt-right, but many would-be allies such as left-wing and moderate opinion makers, prominent intellectuals who are deeply anti-racist and who have the record to prove it, etc., to side with Brett, quote-unquote side with Brett. Certainly, the students have grievances that are completely legit, as do faculty and staff of color. Those grievances are always competing with other legitimate values and priorities. In my view, the politics of this situation are, right now, extremely fragile. We've been united by the hatred of common enemies threatening you, Rashida, and other people of color, and everyone else on campus. I certainly hope we can, in fact, unite, and for better reasons. You can see, I hope, that I am writing to you with candor. I hope you welcome it. My aim is not, in any way, to add to your trauma, which I see is acute and must be painful, angering, and grief-making all at once. I don't want to add to that. It's hard to know the way forward in conversation with you, but I want very much to try, and I hope you do too. Signed, Nancy. To which Lo, Naima replies, Nancy, I'm not really able to engage with this. I think that you have a different experience and interpretation of the students' presence in the protests, which is fine. The students I interacted with took great pains to ensure my safety at all times. Maybe you're more used to being upheld and made safe than you think you are. Maybe there were students who did things I didn't see. I do, however, see that you've focused considerable time on that issue in this letter, and on whatever bone you have to pick with activist faculty instead of with the legitimate issues that the students, faculty, and staff of color have. I see this situation as very similar to a domestic abuse scenario. When people fight back against their abusers, they sometimes do so in ways that injure the person that is in power. That isn't ideal, but ultimately I put more importance on the abused person getting free than on whether their ways of getting free were perfect. I don't have it in me to focus on students who are no longer threatening you to my knowledge because I am currently dealing with people, including Brett, who are continuing to do things that are putting me in danger. It is not their fault that Brett and Eric are doing what they're doing. Everyone involved has choices, and some of those making the choices have more power and responsibility as faculty to how they are responding. Do I assume that students are making all the right choices? No, of course not. But they are students. It is their job to make those sorts of mistakes, and it is our job to help them learn. Brett, on the other hand, is currently collecting a salary from this institution while doing things that are concretely putting my life in danger. Putting those students into the same category as that man is a false equivalent, and I don't have the time or energy to explain to you why that is. I'm speaking with candor as well, Nancy. Those students outnumbered you and made you feel like shit. I believe you when you say that. Now, imagine that this is my experience literally every single time I walk into a faculty meeting. I know that might be hard for you to see here because the faculty meeting isn't full of loud, large students, but it is full of white people who wield power in ways that they don't see or care to see. It is full of white people who give me shit when I tell them that I don't like the way that I'm being treated. It is full of white people who are currently deciding that their 1 hour of discomfort trumps the daily indignities that I and other POC experience. If part of our work is to have empathy, I ask you to try and empathize with what I'm saying, and don't immediately equivocate and assume that what I'm saying is flawed based on your own interpretation of the situation. Try for a moment to play the believing game and assume that the last 7 years of trying to engage with this faculty has been a lot like what you were asked to experience for a single moment. Then come back and tell me why you still feel like it is valid to focus on how the student protests are the problem. Signed, Naima Lowe. Okay, I don't want to do too much editorializing on that. Obviously, Naima Lowe has some issues, but I in no way think that hate mail and death threats are at all warranted in this situation. And part of the problem is that our public discourse has descended to a state, or is, by means of the internet, is allowed to maintain a state of completely wild, just mad threats and that kind of stuff. And so it's important that we see that all this hate mail that Naima Lowe receives is feeding her viewpoint that she is constantly under constant attack, that white supremacy is constantly demeaning her. So what I would ask you guys to consider before attacking somebody, to see if that attack is actually going to help you or help the situation at all. I don't think it is. I think if you can kind of very patiently, respectfully approach somebody with a disagreement, then if they maintain their false view of the world, then you've done everything you've not reinforced that false view of the world. And that's all I'm going to say about that. I shouldn't be making this video this hour of the day. My lady is trying to sleep. So, yeah, there you go.